Most billionaires wouldn't notice if their driver had a bad day, let alone bruises hidden under his uniform. But Serafina Thorne wasn't most billionaires. She noticed everything, and when she saw finger-shaped marks on Cassian Hayes' arm, she made a decision that would collapse a billion-dollar merger, flip corporate insiders, and end with handcuffs clicking in the same garage where a powerful man thought no one could see him. Before we begin, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing this community grow. Now, let's get into the story. Serafina Thorne didn't believe in wasted motion. At 6:43 a.m., she sat in a corner office that hung over the city like a blade, reviewing quantum logistics dashboards. Most executives wouldn't understand if they had a week. But Serafina Seraph, to those who feared or adored her, wasn't most executives. She was a woman who noticed everything. The micro-hesitation in a freight algorithm, the half-beat pause before a board member answered a question, the way people's voices changed pitch when they were about to lie. She'd built Thorne Meridian on that attention, turning patterns into profit, inefficiencies into empires. So when Cassian Hayes walked into her office, carrying the morning logistics brief, she noticed immediately that his sleeve was pulled down too far. Not just down. Deliberately stretched past his wrist, the cuff bunched in his fist like he was trying to hold something together, or hide something. "Good morning, Miss Thorne," he said quietly, his voice steady but soft. It always is. In the 8 months he'd worked for her, Cassian had never been anything but precise. Former army, impeccable references, the kind of driver who anticipated routes before she asked. He was careful, controlled, a man who knew how to be invisible. Seraph watched him approach her desk, his movements measured, practiced. He set the leather portfolio down with both hands. And that's when it happened. The sleeve slipped. Just for a second, maybe 2. But it was enough. Dark purple bruises bloomed along his triceps, wrapping around the muscle like angry vines. Some were fresh deep violet, edges sharp. Others were fading to that sickly yellow-green that meant they were days old. And there, ghosted into the discoloration, were the unmistakable impressions of fingers. Her eyes caught them before he yanked the sleeve back down. She saw him freeze, the exact moment he realized she'd seen. "Cassian," she said calmly, setting down her stylus. "Sit down." "Oh, I should get back to." "Sit." It wasn't loud. Serafina Thorne never needed to be loud. But something in her tone made people listen, not fear, exactly, but the certainty that movement had already been set in motion. He sat in the charcoal chair across from her desk, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the leather. "What happened to your arm?" "Nothing, ma'am. Just clumsy." He forced something that might have been a laugh. "Caught it on the car door yesterday during a detail check." Seraph leaned back, studying him. Cassian Hayes was 42, she knew from his file. Squared shoulders, close-cropped hair going salt and pepper at the temples, dark eyes that rarely made direct contact. He'd served 2 tours, received an honorable discharge, worked private security before transitioning to executive transport. He was thorough, quiet, and he never asked questions. But her head of security, Ari Malik, hadn't mentioned the fear. Because that's what Seraph saw now. Not embarrassment about clumsiness, fear, raw and real, sitting in the tightness of his jaw, the way his shoulders angled toward the door like he was calculating an exit. "Both arms?" she asked gently, noticing how his other hand had drifted unconsciously to rub the opposite bicep. Cassian's face went still. "Ah, yes, ma'am. I'm not as young as I used to be. Show me." "Miss Thorne, really, I'm fine." "Cassian." She kept her voice soft but immovable. "Show me." His hands trembled just slightly, but she caught it as he slowly pulled back both sleeves. Both arms bore the same marks, finger-shaped bruises, dark and deliberate. Someone had grabbed him, hard, recently. Seraph felt something cold and precise settle in her chest. She had built an empire in glass towers and server farms. She'd made decisions that cost people jobs, restructured divisions, crushed competitors who played dirty. She didn't apologize for power, but she had rules lines drawn in permanent ink. And one of those lines was simple. You didn't hurt people who couldn't fight back. Someone had hurt Cassian. Someone had grabbed this man, a veteran, a professional, someone under her employ hard enough to leave marks that looked days old. And he was terrified enough to lie about it. Who did this? Nobody, I told you. Cassian. She leaned forward, resting her forearms on the desk, her voice dropping to something quieter than command. "I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want you to understand something. You work under my roof. You carry my name on your credentials. That means you're under my protection. Do you understand?" He looked at her with those careful, guarded eyes, and for a moment she thought he might tell her. His lips parted slightly. She could see him weighing options in his head, trust against consequence, hope against history. Then he stood abruptly. "I really should get back to the schedule. You have the Meridian board call at 8. Cassian." But he was already backing toward the door, his sleeves yanked down, his walls rebuilt. "Thank you for your concern, Miss Thorne. I promise I'll be more careful." And then he was gone, the door closing with a soft final click. Seraph sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the polished wood where his portfolio still rested. Outside her window, the city stretched toward the horizon, gray towers catching the early light, cargo routes threading through the port district like veins. She picked up her phone and sent a single text to Ari Malek, her head of security. "My office, now." 3 minutes later, Ari appeared. Ari Malek was 51, ex-Mossad, and one of the few people in Seraph's world who wasn't afraid to tell her when she was wrong. Compact, efficient, with silver threading through black hair and eyes that missed nothing. "You bellowed?" Ari said dryly, closing the door. "Cassian Hayes. Tell me about him." Ari's expression shifted immediately to concern. "What happened?" "He's hurt. Bruises on both arms, finger marks, deep ones. He's terrified, and he's lying about it." Ari's jaw tightened. "I didn't know. I swear, Seraph, I didn't." "I know," Seraph waved off the apology. "What do you know about his personal life?" "Not much. He keeps to himself. I know he has a younger brother, Emmett, I think. Cassian mentioned him once during the background check, listed him as an emergency contact. Clean record. Army discharge was honorable, citations for conduct under fire. He needed steady work when he applied. Good references from a security firm, but I got the sense he wanted something quieter." Seraph drummed her fingers on the desk, a rare tell of internal calculation. "I want you to pull every frame of security footage from our garage, every camera, every angle going back 2 weeks. I want to know if anyone followed him here, cornered him, spoke to him, and I want to know where he goes after his shift ends." "You think someone followed him to Thorn Meridian?" "I think someone grabbed him hard enough to leave bruises shaped like hands, and he's too scared to report it." Seraph met Ari's eyes, and her voice dropped to steel. "Nobody touches my people, Ari. Nobody." Ari nodded slowly. She'd seen this side of Seraph before, the protective instinct that fired like a missile lock when someone under her care was threatened. For all her ruthless efficiency, Seraphina Thorne had a code. "I'll pull the footage personally, quietly. And Ari, check if any of our vendor partners or board members have had contact with him, any interaction that wasn't on schedule." Ari paused, hand on the door. "You think it's internal?" "I think," Seraph said quietly, turning back to the window, "that Cassian Hayes is running from something, and I intend to find out what." After Ari left, Seraph sat alone in her glass eyrie, the morning reports forgotten. Outside, the city was waking commuters, flooding train platforms, coffee shops opening their doors, people living ordinary lives unaware of the darker currents running beneath. Somewhere in that city, someone had hurt Cassian, had grabbed him, scared him, made him believe he had no one to turn to. Seraph picked up her phone again, this time opening an encrypted line to Nadia Ko, her head of cyber operations. "Need a deep background workup. Cassian Hayes, employee ID TM 447. Everything. Where he lives, who he knows, any police reports, any legal filings. Discreet. Priority 1. She hit send and set the phone down. Outside, the sun climbed higher over the skyline, painting the glass towers in shades of gold and steel. Inside Seraph's chest, something colder was rising. Someone had made a mistake. They'd hurt someone under her protection. And Seraphina Thorne always made sure mistakes were corrected. By noon, Ari Malek was knocking on Seraph's door with a tablet in hand, expression grim. "That was fast," Seraph said, gesturing her inside. "You're not gonna like it." Ari placed the tablet on the desk, footage already queued. Seraph tapped play. The angle was from camera 7, underground garage, timestamp 5 days prior. The frame showed Cassian walking toward the sedan, keys in hand. Then a figure stepped from behind a concrete pillar, tall, broad-shouldered, expensive suit. The man grabbed Cassian's arm. Not a touch, a grip. Cassian tried to pull back. The man shoved him against the pillar. Words were exchanged, no audio, but the body language was unmistakable. Threat. The man's hand pressed into Cassian's bicep, and even through the grainy footage, Seraph could see Cassian's wince. Then the man released him, straightened his tie, and walked toward the executive elevator. But not before the camera caught a clear frame of his face, and the signet ring on his right hand, glinting under the garage lights. Seraph's blood went ice cold. "Kenneth Hollis," she said, voice flat. Ari nodded. "Your largest vendor partner, your sustainability co-chair, and my cousin Mirabelle's fiancé," Seraph finished, staring at the frozen frame. The man who sat on her foundation board, the man whose signature was inked beside hers on a pending multi-billion-dollar green freight merger, the man whose hand had just left bruises on her driver's arm. Ari crossed her arms. "There's more. I checked the security logs. One of our garage attendants, Marcus Tovey, was on duty that night. He had line of sight to this entire interaction. He didn't report it. Because Hollis told him not to. Or paid him not to." Seraph stood, walking to the window, her reflection ghosted against the skyline. Her voice was quiet, controlled, but beneath it was something molten. "Pull everything, every interaction Hollis has had with any of our staff in the past 6 months, every vendor meeting, every foundation event, every signature on every contract. I want to know what he's hiding. And Ari." She turned, and the look in her eyes made even Ari pause. "This stays between us. No one else. Not legal, not HR, not the board, not yet." "What are you planning?" "Seraph?" Seraphina Thorne looked back at the frozen image of Kenneth Hollis, his hand crushing her driver's arm, his face calm and entitled. "I'm going to build a cage," she said softly, "and then I'm going to make sure he walks into it himself." The war room on Thorne Meridian's 38th floor didn't look like a war room. No dramatic red lighting, no wall of monitors flashing crisis alerts. Just a conference space with soundproofed glass, encrypted terminals, and furniture designed for long sieges. Seraph had used it twice before, once to dismantle a supply chain cartel, once to expose bid rigging in a federal contract. Both times, the room had served its purpose. A sterile environment where evidence could be gathered, analyzed, and weaponized without interference. Today would be the third time. "Walk me through it again," Seraph said, standing behind Nadia Ko's chair. Nadia, 34, MIT trained, capable of finding data people thought they'd buried tapped through the footage frame by frame. The garage system is redundant by design. Primary cameras feed to the main server, but we also have silent backups that write to solid-state drives in a separate location. Most people don't know about the second layer. Hollis didn't know, Ari added from across the table. Exactly. Nadia zoomed in on the timestamp. 5 days ago, 11:47 p.m. Camera 7's primary feed shows a 2-minute gap static, then normal recording resumes. Someone manually interrupted it. "Who?" Seraph asked, though she already knew the answer mattered less than the pattern. "Marcus Tovey, night shift garage attendant. He has admin access to the camera grid. But..." Nadia pulled up a second screen. The backup caught everything. She played the footage again, this time with audio filters applied to pull ambient sound. It wasn't perfect, but Seraph could hear fragments. "Told you no." From Cassian, then Hollis's voice, lower, sharper. "Your brother's job. Think carefully." The hand clamped down. Cassian's face twisted. The ring, a heavy signet, gold band pressed into muscle hard enough to leave its own shadow in the bruise. Then the kicker. Marcus Tovey, visible in the far corner of the frame, turning deliberately away. "He was paid," Seraph said flatly. "It wasn't a question." "Most likely," Ari confirmed. "I pulled Tovey's financials, nothing obvious yet, but Nadia's working on it." Seraph turned to the third person in the room. Rhea Gunn, outside counsel, flown in from Boston on a red-eye. Rhea was 58, gray-haired, and had a reputation for being the lawyer corporations called when they needed to burn down their own house to save the foundation. "Can we use this?" Seraph asked. Rhea didn't hesitate. "Criminally? Absolutely. Assault? Witness intimidation if we can prove the brother angle. Possibly obstruction if Tovey was compensated. Civilly? Even stronger workplace violence. Employer liability exposure for Hollis Transit if this connects to his business operations." "It does," Nadia interjected, pulling up a new file. Cassian's employment records show he occasionally drives vendor liaisons. 3 weeks ago, he drove Kenneth Hollis to a Hollis Transit warehouse inspection. The same night, Hollis asked Cassian to deliver a package off the books. Cassian refused, Seraph said, the pieces falling into place. And 5 days later, this happened. Ari gestured to the frozen frame of Hollis's hand crushing Cassian's arm. Seraph felt the cold precision settle deeper. This wasn't just assault, it was retaliation. A pattern. Lock it down, she said. Everyone in this room signs an NDA. Everything we find goes into a chain of custody, vault timestamps, hashes, the works. I want this airtight. Rhea nodded. I'll draft the agreements. But Seraph, if you're planning what I think you're planning, we need to loop in law enforcement. This can't be a private investigation that goes public later. It'll look like a vendetta. Already ahead of you. Seraph pulled out her phone and placed a call. 2 rings, then a crisp voice answered. Dana Kwan. Dana, it's Seraph. I need a sealed intake consultation. Can you meet today? A pause. Dana Kwan, State Attorney General, former prosecutor, the kind of public servant who'd made a career of taking down people who thought they were untouchable, didn't ask unnecessary questions. How serious? Assault, witness intimidation, possible RICO predicates, video evidence. The target is Kenneth Hollis. Another pause, longer this time. The Kenneth Hollis? Your merger partner? The same. I'll clear my afternoon. 2 o'clock my office. Bring your lawyer. The line went dead. Rhea exhaled slowly. You just declared war on a man who sits on half the charitable boards in this city. No, Seraph corrected, her voice quiet and absolute. He declared war when he put his hands on someone under my protection. I'm just responding with superior firepower. An hour later, Seraph sat alone in her office, the merger contract spread across her desk like a dissection. 473 pages, 12 months of negotiation, a deal that would reshape green freight logistics across 3 continents and position Thorn Meridian as the backbone of sustainable supply chains. Kenneth Hollis's signature was on page 1, next to hers. She flipped to section 19. Indemnification and mutual aid. Most executives skimmed this part boilerplate language about cooperating in audits, sharing compliance costs, protecting each other from third-party claims, but Seraph never skimmed. Buried in subsection 19.4c was a clause she'd insisted on during drafting. In the event of governmental or regulatory inquiry, each party agrees to provide conditional indemnity to employees of the other party who cooperate in good faith, provided such cooperation does not constitute admission of criminal liability by the providing party. She'd written it as protection for her own people, a way to encourage whistleblowers at vendor companies to come forward without fear of retaliation. Now she saw it differently. If she triggered an inquiry, say, a state AG investigation into Hollis Transit, any Hollis executive who cooperated could claim indemnity under the merger terms. Hollis couldn't retaliate without breaching the contract. It was a trap door hidden in legalese. And Kenneth Hollis had signed it without reading carefully. Seraph pulled out her tablet and began drafting an internal memo, her fingers moving with surgical precision. If she was going to flip insiders at Hollis Transit, she needed to offer them a lifeboat. This clause was that lifeboat provisioned, legal, and already agreed to. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ari. Tovi just deposited $5K cash. No paper trail. Fits the timeline. Seraph replied, document everything. Don't approach him yet. Another buzz, this time from her assistant. Your cousin Mirabelle is here. She doesn't have an appointment but says it's urgent. Seraph closed her eyes briefly. She'd known this was coming. Send her in. Mirabelle Thorne was 29. Beautiful in the way magazine covers loved, and until 4 months ago had been pursuing a master's degree in art history. Then Kenneth Hollis had proposed at a foundation gala, and she'd become the darling of society pages, the heiress and the philanthropist, a power couple in waiting. She walked into Seraph's office now with the kind of tension that came from knowing something was wrong but not yet knowing how wrong. Seraph. Mirabelle's voice was tight. Kenneth called me. He said you pulled footage from the garage. He said you're investigating him. Seraph gestured to the chair across from her desk. Sit. I don't want to sit. I want to know what's happening. Then sit anyway. Mirabelle sat, hands knotted in her lap. Seraph studied her cousin, the tremor in her fingers, the careful makeup that didn't quite hide the sleeplessness. Family dinners, holiday photos, The years of shared history, and now this. Kenneth assaulted one of my employees, Seraph said quietly. In my garage. On camera. I'm not investigating him, Mirabelle. I'm building a case against him. The color drained from Mirabelle's face. That's not possible. Kenneth wouldn't. I have video. Then it's a misunderstanding. Maybe. He grabbed my driver hard enough to leave bruises shaped like fingerprints. He threatened the man's brother to keep him silent. And he paid a security guard to delete the footage. Seraph leaned forward. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime. Mirabelle's breath came faster. You're going to destroy him. Yes. He's my fiancé, Seraph. We're getting married in 3 months. Grandmother is already her, voice cracked. If you do this publicly, it will kill her. The scandal will be Kenneth's doing, not mine. But you're choosing to expose it. Mirabelle's hands clenched. You could handle this privately. Pay the driver, make Kenneth apologize, end the merger quietly. And let him do it again to someone else? Seraph's voice cut like wire. No. Mirabelle stood abruptly, tears streaking mascara. I'm asking you, as family. And I'm telling you, as someone who has a responsibility to people who can't protect themselves, Kenneth Hollis will answer for what he did. Seraph softened, just slightly. Mirabelle, if he did this to a man who works for me, what else has he done? What else is he capable of? Mirabelle's face crumpled. She turned and walked to the door, then paused without looking back. Grandmother will never forgive you. The door closed. Seraph sat in the silence, the weight of the choice settling on her shoulders. Family. Legacy. The cost of doing what was right when it hurt people she loved. Then her phone buzzed again. A file from HR, forwarded by Ari. The subject line, Cassian Hayes, schedule change request. She opened it. Employee has requested transfer off morning executive rude, effective immediately. Reason cited. Family concerns. Attached was a secondary note, flagged by the system. Emergency contact Emmett Hayes, age 28, current employer, Hollis Transit Logistics, Warehouse 7 South Dock. Seraph's blood went colder than ice. Cassian's brother worked for Kenneth Hollis. The threat hadn't been abstract. It had been tactical. Precise. You like your brother's job? She stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the city, the docks stretching south. The warehouses where men like Emmett Hayes moved freight and kept their heads down because speaking up meant losing everything. Seraph picked up her phone and texted Ari. I need eyes on Warehouse 7. Discreet. And get me everything on Emmett Hayes. Now. The pieces were falling into place. And Kenneth Hollis had just made his second mistake. Cassian Hayes had learned a long time ago that surviving meant staying invisible. In Kandahar, visibility got you killed. A flash of movement, a silhouette against the wrong skyline, the glint of metal in sunlight. Those were the mistakes that brought fire. So he'd learned to move through spaces like water, noticed but not seen, present but not demanding attention. It had served him well after the discharge. Private security, executive transport, the kind of work where your job was to be competent and forgettable, where questions weren't asked and problems were handled quietly. But sitting in his apartment at 2:17 p.m., staring at his phone, Cassian realized that invisibility had failed him, because Seraphina Thorne had seen. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom in a building that had been up and coming for a decade and never quite arrived. Clean, sparse, the kind of place where nothing was personal, because nothing was permanent. A bed, a table, a kitchen he barely used. On the wall, a single photo of him and Emmett at their father's funeral, both in uniform, both trying not to break. His phone sat on the table like an accusation. 3 missed calls from Miss Thorne's office. 2 text messages from Ari Malek, head of security, asking him to check in when convenient. Nothing from Hollis, which somehow felt worse. Cassian touched his arm through his shirt, feeling the bruises pulse dully. 5 days old now, fading from purple to that ugly yellow-green. In another week they'd be gone. But the threat wouldn't be. You like your brother's job? Keep it. Emmett, 28, 2 years younger, working the Hollis Transit docks because good jobs were hard to find and the pay was steady. Emmett, who'd never deployed, never seen what Cassian had seen, who still believed the system worked if you followed the rules. Cassian had followed the rules. He'd said no to Kenneth Hollis when the man handed him a sealed envelope and told him to deliver it to a warehouse foreman, no questions asked. He'd said no because his job was to drive, not to courier whatever off-books business Hollis was running. And Hollis had made sure he understood the cost of that choice. 5 days earlier, 11:47 p.m., Thorn Meridian Underground Garage. Cassian had been running final checks on the sedan fluid levels, tire pressure, the small rituals that kept vehicles reliable. The garage was quiet, most of the executive staff long gone. Then footsteps echoed off concrete. Kenneth Hollis emerged from the elevator bay, suit jacket open, tie loosened. Cassian had driven him twice before polished. Charming, the kind of executive who tipped well and made small talk about sports. Not tonight. "Hayes," Hollis's voice was clipped, "I need a favor." "Sir, if you need transport, I can have the car ready in." "Not that kind of favor." Hollis pulled a manila envelope from his jacket, thick with something cash. Cassian's instincts said, "I need this delivered to Eddie Markoff, foreman at Warehouse 7. Tonight. Discreet." Every alarm in Cassian's head started screaming. "Mr. Hollis, that's outside my job description. If you need courier services, I can contact—" "I'm not asking for a corporate courier, Hayes. I'm asking you." Hollis stepped closer. 1 hour. "Drop it, don't open it, come back. Simple." "I can't do that, sir." The air changed. Hollis's charm evaporated like steam. "Can't or won't?" "Both." Hollis moved faster than Cassian expected for a man in his 50s. He grabbed Cassian's arm and shoved him back against the concrete pillar, the envelope pressed between them. "Let me explain something," Hollis said, voice dropping to something cold and surgical. "Your brother, Emmett, works at Warehouse 7. Good kid. Reliable. Eddie Markoff tells me he's up for a permanent position." Cassian's blood froze. "Now, if you decide to be difficult, if you decide to make this complicated, Eddie might start noticing mistakes, missed shifts, damaged inventory, things that get people fired. And blacklisted." Hollis's grip tightened, fingers digging into muscle. "You like your brother's job, Hayes? You want him to keep it?" Cassian forced his breathing steady, assessing. He could break the grip muscle memory from combatives training made that easy. But then what? Assault a billionaire CEO in his own garage? Watch Emmett lose everything? "Think carefully," Hollis said, releasing him. The envelope dropped to the floor between them. "I'll be upstairs for another hour. Deliver this, or don't, but understand the consequences either way." Hollis walked back to the elevator, straightening his tie like nothing had happened. Cassian left the envelope on the ground and drove home with his hands shaking on the wheel. Now, sitting in his apartment, Cassian knew leaving that envelope had been the right choice. It had also been the dangerous one. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Cassian, this is Miss Thorne. Can we talk? No pressure. Just a conversation." He stared at the message. Every instinct said to ignore it. To ride this out. To protect Emmett by keeping his head down. But another part of him, the part that had taken an oath to protect, that had led convoys through hostile territory, that had pulled a wounded private out of a burning vehicle, knew that running only worked until it didn't. He texted back. "When?" Her response was immediate. "Now. My office. I'll have a car sent." 30 minutes later, he was back in the glass tower, sitting across from Serafina Thorne. She dismissed her assistant, closed the door, and sat in the chair beside him instead of behind her desk. "I know it was Kenneth Hollis," she said quietly. Cassian's throat tightened. "Miss Thorne, I have footage. I have testimony. I have enough to move forward with or without your cooperation." She leaned forward, hands folded. "But I won't do that to you. I won't make you collateral damage in something I'm building. He'll destroy my brother. Not if I protect him too." Seraph pulled out a tablet, showing him documents. Paid leave, full salary, effective immediately. Trauma counseling, no cost. And this, she held up a phone. "Panic app? 1 button. It alerts my security team and local authorities simultaneously. GPS tracking, audio recording, the works. I don't need—" "Cassian." Her voice was steel, wrapped in silk. "He threatened your brother to control you. He assaulted you in my garage. He thinks you're alone. Prove him wrong." Cassian looked at the phone. At the woman who could have fired him, replaced him, made this someone else's problem. Instead, she was handing him a weapon. If I take that, he said slowly, and something happens, he'll know I talked. He already knows I noticed. Taking this just means you're not facing him alone. Cassian's fingers closed around the phone. Just the app, he said. No leave. I work my shifts. Normal. Seraph nodded. The app then. For now. 2 hours later. Bus route home. Cassian sat 3 rows from the back, the panic phone in his jacket pocket. The city slid past the windows' warehouses, giving way to residential blocks, the docks visible in the distance. His pocket vibrated. He pulled out the phone. The app had activated automatically, a discreet alert flashing. Vehicle alert. Known threat within 50 meters. Black Mercedes. Plate number LHT 4921. Maintaining following distance. Cassian's pulse spiked. He didn't turn, didn't look. Training kicked in. Assess. Plan. Execute. The bus slowed for a stop. Through the side mirror he caught it. A black Mercedes. 2 cars back. Kenneth Hollis visible through the windshield. The message was clear. I see you. I know where you go. The bus doors hissed open. Cassian stayed seated. 3 passengers boarded. The bus pulled away. The Mercedes followed for 2 more blocks, then peeled off at a red light, disappearing into traffic. The threat had been made. The message delivered. Cassian pulled out his personal phone with shaking hands and opened the text thread with Miss Thorne. He typed 4 words. It was Hollis. Then he pressed send and watched the city blur past, knowing he'd just crossed a line there was no coming back from. Cassian just made the call that changed everything. Drop a heart if you're rooting for him, and hit that next. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It's getting intense. The hotel suite was anonymous by design, mid-tier chain, business district, the kind of place where corporate travelers came and went without anyone noticing. Seraph had booked it under a shell company 3 hours ago. Ria Gann had swept it for surveillance. Ari Malik stood outside the door like a statue. Inside, Mara Keene sat on the edge of a chair that cost less than her shoes, looking like a woman who'd just realized the ground beneath her was glass. Thank you for coming, Seraph said, sitting across from her with the merger contract open on the coffee table between them. Mara was 41, Hollis Transit's CFO for 6 years, sharp-dressed and sharper-minded. Seraph had met her a dozen times during merger negotiations, always prepared, always 3 steps ahead in the numbers. A professional who knew how to read a balance sheet and when to stay quiet. Today she looked like someone who'd stopped sleeping. You said this was about the mutual aid clause, Mara said carefully. It is. Seraph tapped the contract. Section 19.4c. Conditional indemnity for employees who cooperate in good faith during regulatory inquiries. I'm invoking it. Mara's face went very still. There's no inquiry. There will be. By tomorrow afternoon, the State Attorney General will open a sealed investigation into Hollis Transit. Assault, witness intimidation, financial irregularities. Seraph kept her voice level. Clinical. When that happens, anyone at your company who cooperates will be exposed to retaliation from Kenneth Hollis, unless they're protected under this clause. You're offering me a deal. I'm offering you a choice. Seraph leaned forward. Cooperate now? Provide documentation of any illegal activity you're aware of, and Thorne Meridian will indemnify you under the merger terms. Legal fees, relocation assistance if needed, employment protection. Or, she let the silence hang. You can wait for the subpoenas and hope Kenneth's loyalty extends to people who know where the bodies are buried. Mara's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the water glass on the table. If I talk, he'll destroy me. If you don't talk, the investigation will destroy you both. Seraph slid a folder across the table. This is a conditional immunity agreement, pre-negotiated with the AG's office. Sign it, and you're protected. Stay silent, and you're complicit. But Mara opened the folder, scanning the first page. Her eyes moved fast. Someone used to reading contracts under pressure, but Seraph could see the exact moment she realized this was real. How bad is it? Mara asked quietly. What did he do? He assaulted one of my employees and threatened the man's brother to keep him quiet. That's what I can prove. What I suspect is worse. Mara closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. He's been running off books payments for 2 years, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Cash envelopes to warehouse foremen, dock supervisors, anyone who could cause problems. He calls them contractor fees, but they're bribes. Shut up, look the other way, Make sure the unions don't get traction. Seraph kept her expression neutral, but inside, the pieces were clicking into place. How much? 7 figures annually. Routed through the charity foundation, his uncle's cancer research fund. Donations get moved into operational grants, then paid out as cash to shell consulting firms. The consultants are the enforcers. And you documented this? Mara nodded slowly. I kept a ledger, encrypted. I told myself it was insurance, in case he ever tried to make me the scapegoat. She looked up, meeting Seraph's eyes. I have emails, transfer receipts, names, everything. Give it to me, Seraph said, and I'll make sure Kenneth Hollis is the only one who goes down. Mara had known this day was coming. Not the specifics, but the shape of it, the moment when Kenneth's arrogance finally caught up with him, and everyone in the blast radius had to choose a side. She'd seen the bruises on Cassian Hayes 3 weeks ago when he'd driven her to a vendor meeting. She'd seen the fear in his eyes when Kenneth walked past. She'd said nothing, done nothing, told herself it wasn't her problem. Now, sitting across from Seraphina Thorne, a woman who looked like she could dismantle empires with spreadsheets and phone calls, Mara realized silence had been its own kind of complicity. She pulled out her phone, opened an encrypted app, and began forwarding files. If she was going down, Kenneth Hollis was going first. 2 hours later, back in her office, Seraph reviewed the ledger Mara had provided. It was worse than she'd expected. Not just bribery, systemic intimidation. Workers forced to kick back hours to keep their jobs. Dispatchers paid to falsify safety logs. A union organizer who'd quit voluntarily after his daughter's school received an anonymous tip about a non-existent bomb threat. And every thread led back to Kenneth Hollis, his signature on authorization memos, his email address in forwarded chains discussing problem management. Ari appeared in the doorway. We've got enough. Let me make a call. 2 hours. Hollis has an accident. Clean, untraceable. Seraph looked up from the ledger. No. Seraph. He thinks the law is a costume, Ari. Something he wears when it's convenient and ignores when it's not. She closed the file, her voice cold and absolute. Let's make it fit. Ari held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Your call. But when this goes public, it's going to get ugly. Then we make sure we control the narrative. By evening, Nadia Coe had built it. Seraph Shield, a confidential whistleblower portal hosted on Thorn Meridian's foundation servers. Encrypted submissions, legal aid guarantees, trauma counseling access, a system designed to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Rhea Gann sent targeted notifications to every contracted worker in the Hollis Transit network. Warehouse staff, drivers, dispatchers, anyone who might have seen something, endured something, stayed silent because speaking up felt impossible. Within 3 hours, the submissions started coming in. 12 affidavits by midnight, 18 by 2 Stories of forced overtime, stolen wages, threats whispered in loading bays. A driver who'd been fired after refusing to falsify a logbook. A dispatcher whose car had been keyed after she reported safety violations. Each one timestamped, documented, witnessed. Seraph read them all, her anger cooling into something more dangerous. Certainty. Her phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Mirabelle. Seraph, please. Her cousin's voice was ragged. I'm begging you. Wait until after the gala. Grandmother's heart can't take this kind of scandal right now. Just 2 more weeks. Mirabelle. 2 weeks. That's all I'm asking. Handle it privately, quietly, after the event. You don't have to destroy him publicly. Seraph pulled up the garage footage on her screen, the frozen frame of Kenneth Hollis's hand crushing Cassian's arm, the ring catching the light, the fear in Cassian's face. She forwarded the image to Mirabelle without a word. 5 seconds passed. 10. Then the line went dead. Seraph set the phone down and turned back to her computer. At 6:23 a.m., Seraph made 3 calls. The first was to Jonathan Mercer, a private equity partner who managed distressed debt portfolios. John, I need you to acquire something quietly. Hollis Transit has floating credit about $40 million in syndicated loans. I want you to buy a sliver through one of your funds. Small enough not to trigger notifications, large enough to request covenant testing. Covenant testing freezes credit lines, Seraph. That's aggressive. That's the point. Can you have it done by market open? For you, consider it done. The second call was to Dana Kwan. We're ready. Mara Keene flipped. I have ledgers, emails, affidavits from 23 workers. We move tomorrow. Tomorrow's fast. Tomorrow's necessary. Hollis knows I'm circling. If we wait, he'll start burning evidence. Then we move tomorrow. I'll have warrants drafted by noon. The third call was to Ari. Put eyes on Hollis. I want to know where he is every hour of the day. And double the security on Cassian and Emmett Hayes. You think he'll escalate? I think cornered animals bite. At 9:14 a.m., Seraph's inbox chimed. An email from First Continental Bank, Compliance Division. Miss Thorne, per the request from Mercer Capital Partners regarding covenant compliance testing on Hollis Transit credit facilities, we'll need to initiate a full review of operating lines. Expect temporary suspension pending documentation. Review begins tomorrow, 8 a.m. Seraph read it twice, then forwarded it to Rhea Gann with a single line. The cage is closing. She stood, walked to her window, and watched the city wake beneath her trucks moving through the port, workers clocking in, the ordinary machinery of commerce humming along, unaware that in less than 24 hours, one of its pillars was about to collapse. Kenneth Hollis's credit lines would freeze at 8 a.m. By noon, he'd be drowning in margin calls. And by the time he realized what was happening, it would already be too late. Dana Kwan's office didn't look like the kind of place where empires were dismantled. No dramatic war room, no wall of evidence photos connected by red string. Just a corner office in the State Attorney General's building, bookshelves lined with legal precedent, and a conference table where Seraph, Ari, and Rhea Gann now sat with the AG and her senior prosecutor. Walk me through the timing, Dana said, pulling up a tactical calendar on her screen. Seraph leaned forward. The Meridian Investor Summit is in 48 hours. Live-streamed, 1,200 attendees, markets watching. I'll be delivering the keynote at 10 a.m. That's our. You're going to announce this publicly? The senior prosecutor, Michael Oren, 20 years in white-collar crime, looked skeptical. That's theatrical. That's strategic, Seraph corrected. If we move quietly, Hollis's connections give him time to spin the narrative, call in favors, lock down witnesses. If we move in daylight, with institutional weight behind it, he has nowhere to hide. Dana nodded slowly. So, at 10 a.m., you dissolve the merger and announce why. Simultaneously. We what? Serve warrants, Rhea said, sliding a document across the table. Hollis Transit Headquarters, 3 warehouse locations, and Hollis's personal office. We seize servers, financial records, communications logs, everything Mara Keene flagged in her affidavit. And the arrest warrant for Hollis himself? Michael asked. Separate timing, Ari interjected. We want him to come to us. Dana's eyebrow arched. Explain. Seraph pulled out her tablet, showing the garage footage. After the summit, Hollis will be cornered, panicked, and looking for leverage. His pattern is intimidation. He'll go after the weakest link he perceives, which is Cassian Hayes. We're going to let him. You're using your employee as bait, Michael said flatly. I'm giving Cassian the choice to be part of his own justice, Seraph replied, with full protection, full backup, and full legal coverage. Hollis walks into a controlled environment, violates an emergency protective order we'll have pre-staged, and gets arrested on camera for the secondary charges: witness intimidation, violation of a protective order, assault if he's stupid enough to touch Cassian again. Dana studied the footage, then looked at Seraph. This is risky, if anything goes wrong. It won't. Seraph's voice was absolute. Because we're going to choreograph every second of it. The Thorn Meridian underground garage had been transformed. Ari walked Seraph through the setup, tablet in hand, pointing to each element like a stage director before opening night. Camera 7, upgraded to 4K, backup recording to 3 separate secure servers. Camera 9, new angle covering the entire approach from the elevator. Mobile unit here. She gestured to an unmarked security truck parked 3 spaces away. Plainclothes detectives inside, audio and video streaming live to the AG's office. Lighting? Seraph asked. Recalibrated. No shadows where we need faces. The moment Hollis enters this zone. Ari tapped a boundary on the tablet screen. The geofence triggers. Emergency protective order gets pushed directly to his phone via the court's digital service system. Time-stamped, legally binding, immediate. And if he ignores it? That's the point, Ari said. The second he approaches Cassian after being served, he's in violation. Everything after that is evidence. Seraph nodded, walking the space, measuring sightlines. The garage felt different now, not a parking structure but a courtroom waiting to convene. Where does Cassian stand? Here. Ari pointed to a spot near the sedan. Back to the pillar where Hollis originally assaulted him. Symbolic, and it puts him in optimal camera coverage. We've rehearsed extraction routes if things escalate, but they won't. Seraph turned to face the elevator bay, visualizing the moment. Because Hollis thinks he's untouchable, he'll walk in here like he owns it. And we'll show him he doesn't. In the Meridian Executive Suite, Seraph rehearsed her keynote for the 4th time. Rhea Gann sat in the back row of the empty conference room, legal pad covered in notes, listening for any phrase that could expose Thorn Meridian to liability. Which is why transparency isn't just a value, it's an operational requirement, Seraph said, advancing the slide. When compliance risk emerges, our duty is to our stakeholders, our workers, and the integrity of the systems we've built. The next slide showed nothing but a date and a camera icon. Recently, footage came to light. Seraph's voice remained level, clinical, that revealed conduct inconsistent with our partnership standards. I won't name individuals, the legal process will do that. But I will say this: Thorn Meridian does not, and will not, do business with entities that harm the people who keep their operations running. She paused, letting the silence hang. Effective immediately, the proposed merger with Hollis Transit is dissolved. In its place, we're launching Seraph Shield, a permanent whistleblower fund, and legal aid program for contract workers across the logistics industry. Because protecting people isn't charity, it's infrastructure. Rhea made a final note. That's bulletproof. No names, no direct accusations, just action and implication. By the time anyone asks questions, the warrants will be public record. Good. Seraph closed the presentation. Because we only get one shot at this. At 9 p.m., Cassian met with Ari and 2 plainclothes detectives in a Thorn Meridian security suite. They walked him through the app, how the panic button worked, how the geofence would trigger, where the backup teams would be positioned. You don't have to engage with him, Detective Sarah Vance explained. In fact, we'd prefer you don't. Just stand where we discussed. Let him come to you. The second he's inside the geofence and approaches, the order is served. After that, it's our show. Cassian nodded, his face unreadable. And my brother? Emmett's under discreet protection starting tonight, Ari said. He doesn't know it, but we have eyes on him 24/7. If Hollis tries anything, we'll know before it happens. What if Hollis doesn't come? Cassian asked quietly. Then we arrest him at his office, Ari replied. But he'll come. Men like him always do. They can't stand losing control. At midnight, Seraph stood on the tower's rooftop terrace. The city spread beneath her like a circuit board of light. She heard footsteps behind her. Cassian, escorted up by Ari, then left alone at his request. You should be resting, Seraph said without turning. So should you. Cassian joined her at the railing, looking out over the skyline. Why are you doing this? Because he hurt someone under my protection. No. Cassian's voice was quiet but firm. I mean, why? You could have paid me off, transferred me, made it go away quietly. Instead, you're burning a $1 billion deal and declaring war on a man with enough power to make your life hell. Why? Seraph was silent for a long moment. When I was 16, she said finally, I had a mentor, a professor at the university where my father taught. Brilliant woman, kind, the first person who told me I could build something that mattered. She paused. The dean of her department was a respectable man. Donations, awards, legacy appointments. He harassed her for 2 years. When she reported it, the board quietly suggested she take a sabbatical. For her own well-being. Cassian turned to look at her. She took the sabbatical, Seraph continued, her voice steady but cold. And 6 months later, she took her own life. The dean retired with full honors. I learned something that year. Power without accountability is just cruelty with better lighting. She finally met Cassian's eyes. So when I say you're under my protection, I mean it, because no one protected her. And I won't let that happen again. Cassian's throat worked. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Seraph said. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. I've survived worse. I know, she straightened. That's why I chose you. At 2:47 a.m., Seraph's personal phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text was simple. Stand down or the gala burns. Last warning. She stared at it for 3 seconds, then forwarded the message to Dana Kwan with a single line. Add terroristic threat to the charges. Then she replied to the unknown number. Let it burn. She silenced her phone, opened her laptop, and pulled up the keynote slides one final time. By dawn, the trap would be set. By noon, Kenneth Hollis would walk into it. And by evening, the city would know what happened when you touched someone Serafina Thorne had decided to protect. Kenneth Hollis, 7:42 a.m. Kenneth Hollis smiled for the camera, coffee cup positioned just so, the morning show host laughing at his anecdote about teaching underprivileged kids to sail. That's what the Hollis Foundation is all about, he said, voice warm, practiced. Giving back. Creating opportunities. Off camera, his phone buzzed for the 8th time in 20 minutes. Kenneth Hollis, everyone, the host said, applause filling the studio. The Meridian Summit kicks off at 10, we'll be watching. The second the red light died, Kenneth's smile evaporated. He pulled out his phone. 3 texts from his board chair, 2 from his attorney, 1 from his bank. The bank message was terse. Need to discuss credit facility. Call immediately. He stepped into the green room and dialed. His relationship manager picked up on the first ring. Kenneth, thanks for calling back. We have a situation. What situation? Kenneth kept his voice level, but his grip tightened on the phone. Mercer Capital acquired a position in your syndicated loan last week. They've requested covenant testing under the standard compliance provisions. It's procedural, but what? We need to pause your operating lines pending documentation review. Just temporarily, until... You're freezing my credit? The day of the biggest investor summit of the year? It's not a freeze, it's a pause. Compliance requires. I know what compliance requires. Kenneth's voice dropped to ice. And I know Jonathan Mercer doesn't buy debt positions for fun. Who put him up to this? Silence on the line. Figure it out, Kenneth said, and ended the call. He stared at his reflection in the green room mirror, polished, powerful, the face of a man who'd built an empire through charm and calculated pressure. Underneath, for the first time in years, he felt the ground shifting. Serafina Thorne, 9:33 a.m. Seraph stood in the Meridian Tower war room, watching 3 screens simultaneously. Screen 1, the summit venue, seats filling, camera crews testing angles, her keynote slot 30 minutes away. Screen 2, First Continental Bank's compliance portal, Kenneth Hollis's credit facility status blinking yellow, review in progress. Screen 3, the Seraph Shield whistleblower portal, submission counter climbing in real time, 47 affidavits overnight, 12 more since dawn. Timestamps locked, Nadia co-announced from her terminal. The moment the credit freeze goes official, we're clear for the public statement. AG's office is synced. Ria Gann paced near the window, phone pressed to her ear. Warrants are signed. Service teams staged at all 4 locations. They move the second. Seraph dissolves the merger on camera. Ari appeared in the doorway. Cassian's in position. Garage is locked down. Detectives are in the truck. Geofence is live. Seraph checked her watch. 9:34 a.m. 26 minutes, until she walked onto that stage. 24 minutes, until Kenneth Hollis's world started collapsing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan Mercer. Bank just notified Hollis. He called me personally. Very angry. Very scared. She replied, good. Keep the pressure on. Seraph. Nadia's voice cut through the room. Credit freeze just went official. Timestamp. 9 hours 35 minutes and 17 seconds a.m. Screen 2 blinked red. Facility suspended. Compliance review pending. Seraph felt something cold and precise lock into place. Send the timestamp to Dana Kwan. Tell her we're green. Ria ended her call. AG's office confirms. The freeze gives us the regulatory predicate we needed. Public statement is cleared for release simultaneous with your keynote. Whistleblower submissions? Seraph asked. 53 and counting, Nadia said. Workers at 4 different Hollis facilities. Dock supervisors, dispatchers, 2 foremen. They're all saying the same thing: kickbacks, threats, retaliation, and... She pulled up a new file. We just got testimony from a union organizer who was run out of Warehouse 7. He's willing to go on record. Seraph pulled up the summary document Ria had compiled. A 20-page brief, every allegation cross-referenced, every affidavit time-stamped and verified. It read like an indictment, because in 4 hours, it would be. Package it, Seraph said. Send it to every major outlet at 10:02 a.m. The moment I finish speaking, not before. They'll run with it immediately, Rhea warned. That's the point. By the time Hollis realizes what's happening, it'll already be everywhere. Kenneth Hollis, 10:11 a.m. Kenneth sat in the summit's VIP lounge, watching the live stream on his tablet. Serafina Thorne stood at the podium, immaculate in a charcoal suit, her voice carrying across the packed auditorium. Transparency isn't optional, she was saying. It's the foundation of trust. And when that trust is violated... His phone exploded with notifications. His CFO, where are you? Vendors are bouncing. Payroll system is flagged. His board chair, we need to talk, now. His attorney, do not speak to anyone until we talk. Then the tablet screen showed Serafina advancing her slide. A single image appeared. A date, a camera icon, and the words, Incident footage, Thorne Meridian Facility. Kenneth's blood went cold. Recently, Serafina said, her voice calm as a blade, footage came to light that revealed conduct inconsistent with our partnership standards. The screen went dark, then showed a silent clip. A concrete garage, 2 figures, a hand clamping down on an arm. The angle made it impossible to see faces clearly, but Kenneth recognized the ring on the hand. His ring. I won't name individuals, Serafina continued. But I will say this. Thorne Meridian does not do business with entities that harm the people who keep their operations running. She paused, letting the auditorium fall silent. Effective immediately, the proposed merger with Hollis Transit is dissolved. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, the sound of 1,000 phones being pulled from pockets. In its place, Serafina said, voice cutting through the noise. We're launching Seraph Shield, a permanent legal aid fund for contract workers. Because protecting people isn't charity, it's infrastructure. Kenneth's tablet chimed with a news alert. Breaking. State AG opens inquiry into Hollis Transit. Assault intimidation allegations. Another alert. Serafina Thorne terminates billion-dollar merger. Cites compliance risk. His phone rang. His board chair. He didn't answer. Because he finally understood what Serafina Thorne had done. She hadn't just exposed him. She'd engineered a systemic collapse, financial, legal, reputational, all timed to detonate simultaneously, in daylight, on camera, with no room for spin or escape. And she'd done it without raising her voice. Kenneth stood, rage and panic warring in his chest. He needed leverage. He needed control. He needed to talk to Cassian Hayes. Serafina Thorne, 10:14 a.m. Seraph stepped off the stage to chaos reporters shouting questions, board members scrambling for phones, investors demanding clarification. She ignored them all and walked backstage, where Ari waited with a tablet. Warrants served, Ari said quietly. 4 locations simultaneous. Servers are being imaged now. Dana Kwan's office just released the public statement. Hollis? Left the summit 3 minutes ago. His car's heading toward Thorne Meridian Tower. Seraph nodded. He's coming for Cassian. Just like you said he would. Seraph's phone buzzed. A message from Mirabelle. I need to see you. Now. Give me 2 minutes, Seraph told Ari. She found Mirabelle in a service corridor, hands shaking, eyes red. Her cousin looked like she hadn't slept. Is it real? Mirabelle asked, voice breaking. The footage. Is it real? Seraph pulled out her tablet and played the full clip, audio restored. Angles synced. Kenneth Hollis's face visible as he grabbed Cassian and shoved him against the pillar. His voice cold and clear. You like your brother's job? Keep it. Mirabelle watched in silence. Tears streaked mascara down her cheeks. When it ended, she pulled the engagement ring off her finger and dropped it into Seraph's hand. I'm sorry, Mirabelle whispered. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Seraph stood alone in the corridor, the ring cold and heavy in her palm. Her phone buzzed. Ari, Hollis just entered the tower garage. It's happening. Seraph pocketed the ring and walked toward the exit, where a car waited to take her back to Thorne Meridian. The trap had been set. The prey was inside. Now came the final act. The lights were surgical, bright enough to illuminate, harsh enough to make lies visible. Seraph stood at the Meridian Summit podium, 1,200 faces watching from the auditorium, another 50,000 streaming live across 6 continents. Behind her, the Thorne Meridian logo glowed against a backdrop of the city skyline. In her earpiece, Ari's voice was calm. All teams green, standing by. Seraph advanced the first slide. A single word in white on black. Transparency. Transparency, she began, her voice steady and clear, isn't a buzzword. It's not a marketing strategy or a compliance checkbox. Transparency is the operational requirement that separates functional systems from corrupt ones. The audience settled, expecting the usual keynote rhythm vision, strategy, quarterly projections. They were about to be disappointed. At Thorn Meridian, we've built our reputation on seeing clearly through markets, through supply chains, through the noise that obscures truth. And when we see clearly, we act accordingly. She paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to feel deliberate. Which brings me to today's announcement. In the livestream control booth 3 floors below, Nadia Ko's fingers hovered over the coordination board. Green lights across every position: AG's office, warrant service teams, media packet distribution, trading floor alerts. Seraph advanced to the next slide. Non-conforming compliance risk. Recently, she continued, voice dropping to something quieter, more precise. Our internal systems flagged what we classify as non-conforming compliance risk within a key partnership, not a financial irregularity, something more fundamental. She clicked again. The screen went black. Then a timestamp appeared. Thorn Meridian Facility, Camera 7, 23 hours, 47 minutes, and 18 seconds. Footage came to light, Seraph said. That revealed conduct inconsistent with our values and, more importantly, inconsistent with basic human decency. The clip began. Silent, high definition, damning. A concrete garage, strip lighting, 2 figures, one in a driver's uniform, the other in an expensive suit. The suited man's hand shot out, grabbing the driver's arm. The driver tried to pull back. The suited man shoved him against a pillar, leaning in close, his other hand gesturing sharp, threatening. The camera angle shifted, zooming slowly. A ring on the suited man's hand caught the light heavy, gold, distinctive. The grip tightened, fingers digging into muscle. The driver's face contorted in pain. 30 seconds. That's all it took. The clip ended. The auditorium was silent except for the sound of 1,200 people holding their breath. I won't name individuals, Seraph said into that silence. The legal process, which is already underway, will handle that. But I will say this clearly. Thorn Meridian does not, and will not, do business with entities that harm the people who make their operations possible. She advanced the slide. Merger termination effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the audience. Phones emerged from pockets like a synchronized wave. The proposed merger with Hollis Transit is dissolved as of this moment. Our legal team has already filed the necessary documentation. Our board has voted unanimously to support this decision. In the VIP section, she could see Kenneth Hollis's empty seat. He'd been there 15 minutes ago, watching, comfortable, now gone. In place of that partnership, Seraph continued, we're announcing something permanent. Seraph Shield, a comprehensive legal aid fund and whistleblower protection program for contract workers across the logistics industry. Because protecting people isn't charity, it's infrastructure. And infrastructure is what we build. The applause started scattered, then built uncertain at first, then genuine, then thunderous. But Seraph wasn't listening to applause. In her earpiece, Ari's voice, egg statement posted, warrants are being served, media packets released. Simultaneous, State Attorney General's office. Dana Kwan stood at a podium in a different building, a different audience, delivering a different speech with perfect timing. This morning our office opened a formal investigation into Hollis Transit and its CEO, Kenneth Hollis, regarding allegations of assault, witness intimidation, and financial irregularities related to worker exploitation. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. We have received credible testimony from multiple witnesses, supported by video evidence and financial documentation. Warrants have been issued and are being executed as I speak. She held up a document, Mara Keene's affidavit, 43 pages, redacted but devastating. This investigation will proceed with full transparency and in accordance with the law. No one, regardless of position or influence, is above accountability. Simultaneous, Hollis Transit headquarters. Plainclothes agents walked through the glass doors with a warrant and a tech team. The receptionist's hand froze halfway to the phone. State Attorney General's office. We have a warrant to seize servers and financial records. Please direct us to your IT department. In the server room, technicians began imaging Drive's terabytes of emails, transaction logs, personnel files. Every digital footprint Kenneth Hollis thought was protected by lawyers and NDAs. In Warehouse 7, a second team executed an identical warrant. Workers watched in silence as boxes of documents were loaded into unmarked vans. The Foundation offices another team, another warrant. Hollis's personal office agents photographing everything, tagging evidence, moving with the methodical efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were looking for. Simultaneous, trading floors, global markets. On screens across New York, London, Hong Kong, the HOLL ticker started moving. Down 2% in the first 30 seconds. Down 8% by the first minute. Down 15% when the AG's statement hit newswires. Traders scrambled, algorithms triggered, circuit breakers started warming up. What the hell is happening with Hollis Transit? Thorne just nuked the merger live on camera. AG's office is rating them assault charges, financial fraud. Get me a short position, now. By the time Sarah finished her keynote, Hollis Transit had lost a third of its market capitalization. By the time the Q&A started, Kenneth Hollis's personal net worth had cratered by $400 million. And the bleeding wasn't close to stopping. Seraph walked off stage into controlled chaos. Reporters shouting, board members on phones, investors demanding private meetings. Ria Gann intercepted her. It's done. Every warrant served, every server secured. Mara Keene's affidavit is public. The whistleblower portal just crossed 70 submissions. Hollis? Left the summit 8 minutes ago. His phone's been blowing up board members, attorneys, banks. He's not answering. Seraph's earpiece crackled. Ari's voice, tighter now. Seraph, Hollis's car just entered Thorne Meridian's garage access route. He's not going to his office. He's coming to the subterranean level. Seraph felt everything inside her go cold and focused. He's going for Cassian. That's the assessment. Detective Vance confirms garage team is in position. Cassian's in place. Geofence is armed. Seraph turned to Ria. Get me a car. Now. You don't need to be there. Yes, I do. Seraph was already moving toward the exit. This ends where it started. In her ear, Ari's voice. Hollis just cleared building security. He's in the elevator. 30 seconds to garage level. Seraph's car was waiting at the curb. She slid into the back seat, and the driver, not Cassian, a security contractor, pulled into traffic without waiting for instruction. Nadia's voice joined the channel. All cameras live. AG's office is streaming. This is being recorded from 6 angles. Ari again. Elevator doors opening. He's in the garage. A new voice, Detective Vance. Geofence armed. Protective order queued. We are green for service. Seraph's car was still 4 blocks away, moving through midday traffic. On her phone, she pulled up the live camera feeds from the garage 6 angles, all showing the same scene. Cassian Hayes standing beside the black sedan, exactly where he'd stood 5 days ago when Kenneth Hollis first grabbed him. And Kenneth Hollis stepping out of the elevator, jaw tight, eyes scanning, spotting Cassian immediately. Ari's voice, calm and absolute. He's coming to the garage. Positions. Seraph leaned forward. Drive faster. Cassian Hayes had stood in kill zones before. Kandahar checkpoints at dawn, waiting for the convoy to roll through, knowing snipers had already ranged the distance. Supply routes where IEDs turned asphalt into shrapnel. Moments where survival meant stillness, staying exactly where you were supposed to be, trusting the plan, letting the chaos happen around you instead of to you. Standing in the Thorne Meridian garage at 10:27 a.m., waiting for Kenneth Hollis to arrive, felt exactly like that. Except this time, he wasn't alone. The garage looked the same as it had 5 days ago, concrete pillars, strip lighting, the smell of motor oil and tire rubber, but the details were different now. The cameras were repositioned, lenses catching angles that hadn't existed before. The lighting had been recalibrated, shadows eliminated. The security truck 3 spaces away looked like any contractor vehicle, except Cassian could see Detective Sarah Vance's silhouette through the tinted windshield, tablet glowing in her lap. Cassian touched the panic app in his pocket. 1 button. That's all it would take. In his ear, Ari Malik's voice was steady. Hollis just cleared building security. Elevator ascending to P1. 60 seconds. Cassian moved to the sedan, the exact spot where Hollis had shoved him against the pillar. His arm still remembered the pressure. The bruises now faded to nothing but the memory sharp as broken glass. 45 seconds, Ari said. Cassian, you don't have to engage. Just stand where we discussed. Let him come to you. Understood. His voice sounded calmer than he felt. 30 seconds. The second he crosses the geofence boundary, the order gets served. After that, if he approaches you, he's in violation. We handle the rest. Cassian nodded, even though Ari couldn't see him. In the security truck, he knew. 6 cameras were recording. Audio streaming live to the AG's office. A bailiff with a tablet, finger hovering over the SENND button that would deliver an emergency protective order directly to Kenneth Hollis's phone. A legal tripwire, invisible until it snapped tight. The elevator chimed. Doors slid open. Kenneth Hollis stepped into the garage. He looked different than Cassian remembered. The charm was gone, stripped away like paint under a blowtorch. His suit was still expensive, his shoes still polished, but his face was tight with rage barely held in check. His eyes found Cassian immediately. For 3 seconds, they just looked at each other across 30 feet of concrete. Predator and prey. Except this time, the roles weren't clear. Hollis took a step forward. Another. He crossed the yellow line painted on the floor the geofence boundary Cassian had memorized. In the security truck, the bailiff tapped SEND. Hollis's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen. Cassian couldn't see the text, but he knew what it said. Emergency protective order, Kenneth Hollis. You are hereby ordered to maintain a distance of no less than 100 feet from Cassian Hayes, effective immediately. Violation of this order is a criminal offense punishable by arrest. Hollis read it. His jaw tightened. Then he put the phone back in his pocket and kept walking. Violation confirmed. Detective Vance's voice crackled through Cassian's earpiece. We are green for arrest. Hollis closed the distance 20 feet, 15, 10, his hand already rising, reaching, the same gesture Cassian had seen 5 days ago. You spineless, Hollis started. Cassian's hand moved to his pocket. He pressed the panic button. 3 things happened simultaneously. The floodlights exploded to life, blinding white, every shadow erased, every angle visible. The security truck doors flew open, plainclothes detectives moving with practiced efficiency. And Ari Malek's voice, still calm, still absolute. Hold position, Cassian. Let them work. Kenneth Hollis. Detective Vance's badge was out, her voice carrying through the garage. You're under arrest for violation of an emergency protective order and assault. Put your hands behind your back. Hollis froze, his hand 6 inches from Cassian's shoulder. For a moment, Cassian thought he might actually comply. Then Hollis turned, tried to step back toward the elevator. 2 detectives moved to intercept. Hollis jerked away from the first, shoulder-checking him, trying to create space. Don't touch me, Hollis snarled. Do you know who I? Hands behind your back now. Vance's partner, Detective Marcus Oren, caught Hollis's wrist, twisted it into a compliance hold Cassian recognized from military police training. Hollis resisted for another 3 seconds, pulling against the grip, enough to make it clear on camera that this wasn't cooperation. Enough to earn a second charge. The cuffs came out steel, not plastic zip ties. The click echoed through the concrete like a gunshot. Click. The right wrist. Click. The left. Kenneth Hollis, billionaire CEO, philanthropist, man who'd spent decades believing his power made him untouchable, stood in handcuffs under surgical lighting, with 6 cameras recording every angle. Cassian finally exhaled. His hands were shaking. He pressed them against his thighs, forcing steadiness, the way he'd learned in firefights when adrenaline made your body betray you. You're making a mistake, Hollis said, voice dropping to something cold and venomous. I have attorneys who will. You have the right to remain silent. Vance interrupted, reciting Miranda in a tone that suggested she'd done this 1,000 times. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Cassian stopped listening. He watched them walk Hollis toward the exit, the man's expensive shoes scuffing concrete, his suit jacket pulled awkward by the cuffs. Ari appeared beside him, silent, just a presence. You okay? She asked quietly. Yeah. Cassian's voice was rough. Yeah, I'm okay. Parallel cascade. Next 47 minutes. 10:34 a.m. First Continental Bank. Credit Risk Division. Hollis just got arrested on camera. Pull all remaining facilities immediately. Legal wants full separation before market close. 10:41 a.m. Hollis Foundation Boardroom. Emergency vote. Motion to suspend Kenneth Hollis from all foundation activities pending investigation. All in favor? 7 hands rose. No one abstained. 10:52 a.m. Hollis Transit Emergency Board meeting. We need an interim CEO by end of business today. Legal's recommending full cooperation with the AG. We voluntarily turn over everything: servers, files, communication logs. Show we're not protecting him. 11:03 a.m. Trading floors. Whole ticker. Down 47%. Trading halted pending news. Options market in freefall. 11:18 a.m. Federal building. Evidence processing. 37 seized servers being cataloged. Forensic imaging teams working in shifts. Estimated timeline. 6 weeks to process everything. Estimated evidence yield. Catastrophic. 11:29 a.m. Media alerts. Global. Bloomberg. Hollis Transit CEO arrested following assault allegations. Thorn Meridian terminates billion-dollar deal. Cites compliance risk. CNN. Billionaire Kenneth Hollis in custody. AG opens criminal investigation. The feeds multiplied. Algorithmic and relentless. The story spreading like fire through dry timber. Cassian. 11:34 a.m. The garage was quiet now. The detectives had left. The cameras were being packed. The floodlights dimmed back to normal. Cassian stood by the sedan, watching the last police cruiser pull up the exit ramp. Kenneth Hollis sat in the back seat, visible through the window, his face a mask of rage. As the cruiser passed, Hollis turned his head, eyes locking onto Cassian through the glass. His mouth moved, forming words Cassian couldn't hear but could read clearly. You made enemies you can't see. Then the cruiser turned the corner, taillights receding, and Kenneth Hollis disappeared from Cassian's life. Cassian's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, expecting another security alert, another instruction. Instead, a calendar invite from Thorn Meridian HR. Subject: Support Services, Cassian Hayes. Description: Paid administrative leave 6 months, full salary. Housing assistance, relocation, if desired. Trauma counseling, weekly sessions, no cost. Legal aid retainer established. Contact Ari Malik or HR Director Yun Lee for questions. You are under our protection. Invitee: Cassian Hayes. Status: Accepted, auto-enrolled per executive order. Cassian stared at the screen. 6 months, full salary, housing, counseling. You are under our protection. He looked up as a town car pulled into the garage. Serafina Thorn in the back seat, window down, watching him. She didn't get out, didn't speak. Just met his eyes with something that wasn't pity or victory. Just certainty. Then the car pulled away, heading back toward the summit, leaving Cassian alone in the garage where his nightmare had begun and, somehow, ended. His phone buzzed again. A text from his brother, Emmett. What the hell is happening? Are you okay? News says your boss arrested Hollis. Cassian typed back with steadier hands. I'm okay. I'll explain everything. We're safe now. Then he walked toward the elevator, leaving the concrete and the cameras and the ghost of Kenneth Hollis's grip behind. Seraph, 3 days later, 6:47 p.m. The city looked different at dusk. Softer, the harsh edges of glass and steel blurred by fading light. Seraph stood at her office window, coffee gone cold on her desk, watching the port in the distance where trucks moved in patterns that looked random but weren't. Behind her, 3 screens displayed the cascade she'd engineered. Screen 1, Corporate Collapse. Hollis Transit Emergency Board Resolution, 11:58 p.m. Day 1. Kenneth Hollis removed as CEO, effective immediately. Mara Keene appointed interim CEO with mandate to cooperate fully with authorities. Day 2. Federal prosecutors notify the board RICO predicates under review. Pattern of racketeering, witness intimidation, financial fraud spanning multiple states. Day 3. Arraignment scheduled. Bail set at $5 million. Hollis posts it, ankle monitor attached, passport surrendered. Hollis Foundation. All board invites rescinded. His uncle's name removed from the cancer research wing. Asset freeze expanding. Yacht seized for financial audit. 3 properties flagged. Offshore accounts under scrutiny. Screen 2. Market reaction. Whole ticker suspended indefinitely. Shareholder lawsuits filed within 48 hours. Class action by workers alleging systemic wage theft in motion. Merger termination costs, 0. Thorn Meridian stock up 3% on ethical leadership. Screen 3. Legal machine. AG's office. 127 witness interviews scheduled. Forensic accounting teams processing terabytes. Estimated trial date, 8 months. Seraph Shield submissions. 203 affidavits and climbing. Workers from 17 different companies, emboldened by what happened to Hollis. Seraph turned from the window. On her desk sat 2 stacks of letters. The first stack, hate mail. Threats. Mostly. Anonymous accounts accusing her of destroying a good man, weaponizing victimhood, ruining lives for publicity. She'd forwarded every credible threat to law enforcement and filed the rest. The second stack, thank you letters. Handwritten, some in shaky script, others typed on phones and printed at libraries. Workers who'd seen the footage, read the news, understood what she'd done and why. My boss used to grab my arm like that. I never reported it because I thought no one would care. Thank you for showing someone does. I'm a warehouse foreman. What you did, it means something. It means we're not invisible anymore. My daughter works dispatch. She came home crying because of what her supervisor said to her. She's filing a complaint now because she saw Cassie and Hayes get protected. Thank you. Seraph picked up one letter, unsigned, postmarked from Queens. Enclosed is $200. It's all I have, but I want it to go to Seraph Shield, so the next person doesn't have to be alone. She deposited every donation into the fund, $12,000 so far, in increments of 5, 10, 50. Workers protecting workers. It was more powerful than any board resolution. Riagan appeared in the doorway. The legal clinic is formalized. Standing retainer with Sullivan and Chen. Any contracted worker at any Thorn Meridian site now has access harassment, wage theft, safety violations, anything. Pro bono for the worker, we pay the retainer. Panic apps? Seraph asked. Rolled out to all drivers, warehouse staff, and contracted personnel. 847 devices deployed. Geofencing programmed for every Thorn facility. If anyone triggers it, security responds in under 3 minutes. Training? Mandatory. Ari's team is running sessions every week. We're also adding bystander intervention protocols if you see something. The system protects you for reporting it. Seraph nodded. Make it the standard. I want every company we partner with to adopt the same protocols, or we don't do business. That's going to shrink our vendor pool significantly. Then they'll adapt or we'll build alternatives. Seraph's voice was absolute. The cost of doing business with us is treating people like they matter. Non-negotiable. Ria almost smiled. Understood. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mirabelle, the first since she'd walked away 3 days ago. Thank you. 2 words. No explanation, no apology, no promise to reconcile. Seraph looked at the message for a long time, then replied, Take care of yourself. She didn't expect an answer. Mirabelle had already disappeared from the society pages, her engagement announcement quietly scrubbed from the Foundation website, her name absent from the upcoming gala guest list. Some exits were quieter than others. Cassian. Same evening. 7:23 p.m. The apartment was small but clean, 1 bedroom, a kitchen that actually had space to cook, windows that looked out over a neighborhood where trees grew between buildings. Cassian stood in the center of the empty living room, keys in his hand, trying to process the fact that this was his now. 6 months, rent paid, utilities included, security deposit covered. You're under our protection, Seraphina Thorn had said, when she'd handed him the keys 2 hours ago in her office. Not a question, not a suggestion, a statement of fact. Miss Thorn. Seraph, she'd corrected. And this isn't charity, Cassian. This is infrastructure. You stood up when standing up was dangerous. Now it's my turn to make sure you don't face the consequences alone. She'd slid a folder across the desk. Inside, a lease agreement, contact information for a trauma counselor, the panic app access codes, and 1 more document. Employment offer, Emmett Hayes, Thorn Meridian Logistics Division, union-aligned apprenticeship program. Your brother, Seraph had said quietly. He starts Monday. Living wage, benefits, union representation. No ties to Hollis Docks, no debt owed. Cassian's throat had closed. Why? Because Hollis threatened him to control you. I don't leave loose ends, and I don't let threats stand. She'd met his eyes. He's under my protection too. Now, standing in the apartment, Cassian pulled out his phone and called Emmett. You're really doing this? Emmett's voice was awed, disbelieving. She's really giving me a job? She doesn't give things, Em. She builds systems. You'll work. You'll earn it. But yeah, you start Monday. I don't understand why. Because someone finally decided we're worth protecting. Cassian looked out the window at the city, lights beginning to glow as dusk deepened. And maybe that's how it should have been all along. Seraph, 9:34 p.m. Seraph took the elevator down to the subterranean garage alone. Security protocols overridden, just her and the concrete and the ghosts. She walked to the pillar where Kenneth Hollis had grabbed Cassian Hayes 5 weeks ago. The scuff marks were still visible where the cuffs had scraped metal, where shoes had scuffed during the arrest. Ari had asked if she wanted the garage repainted. Fresh start, she'd suggested. Seraph had said no. But tonight, she knelt and opened a small can of black paint, a brush in her other hand. Carefully, precisely, she covered the scuff marks, not erasing them, memorializing them. A reminder that this space had witnessed cruelty and then justice, that systems could change, that protection was possible. When she finished, she stood, wiping her hands on a cloth, and looked at the black paint drying on concrete. Kenneth Hollis would go to trial. He'd hire expensive lawyers, try to plea down, maybe even win some battles. But he'd already lost the war. His empire had collapsed. His reputation was ash. Every worker he'd ever intimidated now had a model for fighting back. And Seraph Shield would outlast them all, a permanent infrastructure, growing with every donation, every affidavit, every person who decided silence was no longer the only option. She hadn't broken one man. She'd changed the math. Changed the cost of cruelty from something workers paid alone to something perpetrators couldn't afford. Changed the equation so that the next Kenneth Hollis would think twice, and the next Cassian Hayes wouldn't have to stand alone. Seraph walked to the elevator, paint can in hand, the garage quiet behind her. At the threshold, she paused and looked back one last time. The cameras were still there, the panic system still armed, the protection still real. No one touches my people, she thought, not anymore. The elevator doors closed, and she ascended back into the tower, leaving the garage and its ghosts behind, not forgotten, but no longer in control. Above her, the city hummed. Below, fresh paint dried on concrete. And somewhere in the distance, Cassian Hayes stood in an apartment with keys that meant safety, finally able to exhale. The story ended where it had started, in a garage, with a bruise read like a map, but the destination had changed. And that made all the difference. What did you think? Did Seraph deliver justice, or did she go too far? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget there's another story waiting for you on screen. Click it now. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, imagine what's coming next. The video on your screen is already queued up, hit it before you forget. And drop a comment telling me where you're from. I love seeing this community grow worldwide.